Welcome. This is Mary Magnuson, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar on low-income devices and connectivity. This is one in a series of monthly webinars Blandin Foundation offers for our Blandin broadband communities and open to anyone with an interest in using technology to improve community. Before we begin, I'll point to the chat box on the lower left corner of your screen. To interact with us at any time during today's webinar, you can simply type your question or comment in the chat box. And I'm speaking up because I'm seeing the comment about turning the volume up. I don't really have any way to do that, but I'll speak up a little bit. And now let's get started. Again, my name is Mary Magnuson. I work here at Blandin Foundation, and I administer the Blandin Community Broadband Program. Joining me today is Bill Coleman of Community Technology Advisors, who I'm sure many of you know. Bill has been Blandin Foundation's primary broadband program consultant for a number of years, and he's going to be moderating today's webinar. So take it away, Bill.
Thank you, Mary. This is the second of three webinars we're having on digital inclusion. And the idea of digital inclusion is that we want to make sure that everyone in our community has a network connection, a device to connect to the network, and the skills to make use of that connection to the fullest for economic development, for healthcare, quality of life, and so on. Today we have three highly qualified speakers to talk to us about digital inclusion, and you can see their pictures there on the screen. And Ann Tracy is going to lead off. Ann is president of Tracy Information Systems, and she has been a friend and a colleague for many years. She is the leading and amplifying voice on Minnesota broadband through her role as editor-in-chief of the Blandin on Broadband blog. With a master's in library science and keen sense of storytelling, Ann finds and shares information on broadband for Minnesota and far beyond. Ann has operated Tracy Information Services for many years, creating websites, e-commerce, and social media strategies for many companies and organizations. She is also a highly sought-after technology training consultant, enhancing the tech savviness of computer beginners, Main Street businesses and manufacturers, and our own Blandin broadband team. Following her will be Sam Drong, who is a Chief Program Officer for PCs for People. He is responsible for many of the organization's statewide digital inclusion initiatives, including finding new strategic partners to help bridge the digital divide. Sam has over 13 years of experience working as an IT strategist and consultant for several Minnesota nonprofits and small businesses. And following Sam will be Anna Boroff. Anna is the executive director of the Minnesota Cable Communications Association, a trade association which represents all of Minnesota's major cable companies. Cable companies are the leading provider of broadband, voice, and video services in Minnesota. Prior to the Cable Association, Anna was the Senior Public Policy Director for the Minnesota Corn Growers Association, assisting farmers in developing federal and state policy and improving government relations strategies. Prior to that, Anna spent close to 10 years at the Minnesota Legislature, most recently as leadership staff for the House Majority Leader in 2010 to 2012. Welcome to our speakers. Ann Tracy, take it away.
Great, thank you. See if I can get the slides up here. My role today really is to sort of set the stage. As Bill said, I have a degree in library science. I'm kind of a librarian without a reference. Online, why we should care. Just kind of some of the statistics to help answer the question, and then I'm going to leave it to Sam and Anna to provide us with some solutions and how to get people online as far as getting them access to computers and connectivity. Start off with, I have all of the presentations actually will be available on the Blandin on Broadband blog. As Mary said, either later today or tomorrow. They're all queued up. So 13% of Americans don't use the internet now. That's from 2016 Pew Research. We can break this down to take a look at who isn't online Again, this is from Pew. As we look through, you can see it's, I like the visual here because the more blue you see, those are the people who aren't online. It's folks who are older. 41% of 65 people 65 years older, 65 and older are not online. Folks who are lower income, folks with less than a high school degree or high school degree, and then people in rural areas. Those are kind of the standouts. Those have been the standouts for as long as I've been looking at this, so at least 15 years. That hasn't changed much. And taking a look at why they're online, 13% don't have computers. The thing that's changed about that statistic really over the last 15 years is that that number is one that has gotten lower and lower and lower. But there still is that remaining. It's not quite the 80-20 rule, but the 87-13 rule. There's still a percentage of folks who don't have computer. Often that is because it's too expensive. They can't afford it. The other reasons that they give for not being online is they don't have access. That might be folks in rural areas where there is no access, or again, it's too expensive. Physically unable, I think that still kind of speaks to not being able to afford it, because there are a lot of tools out there now, adaptive technology that can help people with visual impairments and other things get online. So it's one of the biggest roadblocks. You can see that as they often list it, looking at the graph or the chart on the right, 21% are just not interested. I think I might make the case too that a lot of times that has to do with priorities. They're not interested in that over other things that they need to pay for. So, taking a look at what folks are using, a lot of folks have access to smartphones. We're reading more and more, especially in the lower incomes. People are using smartphones for their devices, for their main access to the internet. I know that I've done training. I remember I did some training up on the reservation in Cloquet. Met many people who are running businesses off their smartphones. They're selling things online, and the only access that they have is their smartphone. I think that I'm terrible with directions. Therefore, I think a smartphone can be a game changer for a lot of things. I think they're great for maps. I think they're great for banking. Here on the right-hand side, we can take a look at what people do on their smartphone based on their household income. The lighter the income, those are the folks who have make $75,000 and more a year. So you can see there are, they do their online banking. Folks who have a choice. Taking a look at the fact that most people who have make at least $75,000 a year at most households, they generally have a device of some sort, and they might have a smartphone. So there are some things that, even if you have a choice, you prefer to do online. Information on health conditions. But then there are some things that I think are real game changers on terms of your day-to-day life. People who have a choice are filling out a job application on their smartphone. And that true too with homework. Few people, my kids have devices, my kids have smartphones. They always want to use one of my computers when it comes to writing a paper. Doing things that I think might make a case lead to better economic development for the household are often those things that you need to do online. You can buy things online pretty easily. Posting something online, selling it online is a different sort of application. And people who have devices only, here we go, mobile-only families are less likely to, as I said, shop, bank, apply for jobs, kind of just what I was saying earlier. If you only have a smartphone, that's really going to limit what you're going to do online. One of the things that struck me most is this: children without home access are less likely to go on to pursue their interests. We're shutting the door. I always tell my kids, don't let the 10-year-old you shut the door on the adult you. We're shutting the door on the 10-year-olds in our communities when they don't have access to a device, they don't have access to connectivity. And in some ways, I feel even deeper for the folks who aren't able to pursue the things that aren't related to school. I think of my own kids. It's their passion isn't necessarily in the science class, but at least one of them, her passion is technology. It is coding. If she weren't able to do some of that at home, those doors would be closed for her. Why do we care? Why do we care as a community? Why do we care as a society? Here you go. People who are adopters save $11,000 a year. That's a quote from the Internet Innovation of America. I may be getting one of those words wrong, but they come out with that, and each year it seems like more and more. That's money that you see being able to do banking online, not having to use stamps. They count how much entertainment you were able to do from home versus go to a theater. There's a whole lot of things that come into terms with that. But take a look at any new Americans, the money that you spend being able to communicate people through the computer versus communicating with folks internationally. That long distance still exists. My sister and I always laugh about my sister in Chicago, and I laugh about don't be quiet, we're all long distance. It may not exist if your sister's in Chicago, but it exists if your sister's in Ireland, in Somalia, in wherever they may be. I think 7 in 10 teachers assign homework that requires a broadband connection. If you don't have that broadband connection, you're going to be in trouble. Telemedicine saves, you can see that right there. Each visit will save the patient or their family $156. And 245 minutes. Nobody has to drive you to the hospital. There are some of the, on the right-hand side, ways that people can make money once you're online. Some of the Airbnb, the TaskRabbit. I'm sure most folks have heard about this, but this is making a real difference, especially to those folks in the lower income bracket. $900 lower income bracket, maybe they're not taking so much advantage of the Airbnb, but Uber or Lyft, almost $400 spent a month. That's a difference of paying bills or not paying bills. As a community, we have SNG did some research, really think with funding from the Blandin Foundation a few years ago, and found that in rural Minnesota, every $10 we spend on broadband, every dollar we spend on broadband, there's a benefit of $10. This is a 10-to-1 return on investment. In Denmark, electronic invoicing saves taxpayers 150 million euro. It's been a while since I've done the conversion, but that's got to be about, I'm going to say certainly at least $200 million, $120 million, I'd say. Telepsychiatry projects save $25,000 per patient. I often go to visit with the Broadband Task Force. We just learned a lot about telemedicine last month on their visit. First, psychiatrists are very difficult to come in rural areas. There aren't enough to go around to see that. So it's the difference between a kid being able to access a psychiatrist or an adult being able to access, they happen to be talking about youth, access a psychiatrist or not, and it's that saving of $2,500 per patient. Also, especially in a smaller town, a kid doesn't want to be seen going into that office. It helps the privacy, it helps security of that person. We've got more cost savings here. We just saw a study the other day that households, this is from Roberto Gallardo, he held presentations at the fall conference. He said that the economic benefits of having a broadband connection were $1,850 a year. That was, or if you take a look at a rural community, if everybody gets online, everybody has access, and everybody takes advantage of it through, I'm trying to remember if it was throughout the U.S., the benefit was $22.5 billion a year. So those are some of the reasons that we want people to get online, and some of the reasons that folks should want to be able to get online. Now I'm going to leave it to Sam and Anna to tell us how we can make that happen.
Thanks, Ann. I appreciate that. We should have compared notes a little bit. I had planned to cover a little bit of the same stuff, so I'll just kind of skim past some of the things that Ann had already covered. So my name's Sam. As Bill said, I'm with PCs for People. I'm the Chief Program Officer. That just kind of puts me in charge of creating a lot of different, trying to create a lot of different partnerships with different types of organizations across the state and nationwide to try to help people gain access to computers and internet services. So just kind of touching over the things that I wanted to talk about just briefly was the who the digitally distant are, which is mostly what Ann had spoken about. So I will breeze through that pretty quickly. What we do and how we do it. So as Ann had mentioned, certainly since the time these statistics were tracked, basically household income, race and ethnicity, age, educational attainment, and geography really play a key role. There's a lot of, as Ann had mentioned, there's a lot of good statistics from Pew Research and that cover a lot of these things. I did want to just touch briefly on household income as well as geography because I think they're the most pertinent to this group. One statistic here that I like to include that is, I realize, is starting to kind of show its age a little bit since this is about half a decade old, but we still see a lot of desktop and laptop ownership with specifically the people that we as PCs for People deal with that are under, have household incomes of under $30,000 are far less likely to own a computer, let alone have internet at home. So that's really who we're trying to work with. PCs for People work specifically with people that are 200% of the federal poverty level or below. Our average household income is $12,500 a year, so it's still well below the $30,000 that are tracked here in the annual income. One thing that I think is interesting here, it shows information just in a slightly different way than how Ann had presented them. So Pew just recently has divided out some of their statistics. So what we can see here is this is internet users. So this is anybody that uses the internet. So whether they use it at home, whether they use it at school, whether they use it at the parking lot at McDonald's. It doesn't matter. Wherever they're using it, they're included in these statistics. So what we see here is 81% of the people that we're trying to target use the internet. However, when you compare that to that same group, the people that actually have internet in the home, it drops to 53%. So just a little over half of the people actually have internet at their home compared to I'm going to just go back one slide, the 81% of people that use it. Only about half are able to use it in their home. So I think that's a key distinction of what PCs for People as an organization tries to address. Then I'll just, since we're working with Blandin, I thought it would make sense to discuss the same rural gap. So what we see here is 84% of people that live in rural communities use the internet. However, only 63% actually have internet access at home. So, and then this is one other thing that's changed significantly from Pew stats. I know Ann's were just a little bit older than this, but one of the things that is noteworthy, you'll remember from the previous charts that relevance was a key determining factor of whether or not some people wanted to use the internet. And you remember that was at the top of the list. And statistics as recent as 2014 still had that relevance as a factor. However, I actually talked with the person at Pew that put these statistics together, and they've changed the survey a little bit, so it's a little bit skewed. It's a little difficult to tell exactly how it's skewed, but they had found that the relevance had fallen off to a point that it didn't make it onto their survey. So you'll see now 43% of people, according to Pew, the reason they don't use the internet is because it's just too costly. So that, again, is really where PCs for People focuses their energy. So what we basically do is we provide refurbished computers, computer repair, as well as internet services to low-income families, also to nonprofits as well. But specifically how we offer computers is that we're a storefront as well as an online store, and when someone is interested in getting a computer, all they need to do is basically prove they're eligible for our program. So what that means is they need to, again, like I said, we deal only with people that are 200% of the federal poverty level or below. So depending on the household size, that number varies slightly. But essentially, they can either show a tax return or show that they received some form of government assistance. So they can show us a letter that they get from the school district saying their kids are eligible for free or reduced lunch. They can show us energy assistance letter that they would get from the county, or an SSI statement, anything that shows that they received some form of government assistance that would qualify them for the program. So once they do that, they have access to the technology that we offer. So we offer desktop computers. We offer free desktop computers, but if we also offer a $30, a $50, and a $100 model computer. The ranging price is determined by kind of age and the speed of the computer. So the free ones are the oldest ones that we have, but they're still more than capable of going online and helping do basic web surfing and any sort of typing or word processing that would need to be done. They'd be good for homework. Whereas if we move to the end of the spectrum, the $100 machines are going to be much better computers. They're all business class equipment that's usually somewhere between 2 and 4 years old. So they run Windows 10. They're very capable computers of doing pretty much anything you'd want reasonably well, short of maybe trying to edit high definition video. They're great for doing all that. We also offer laptop computers, and those are again at kind of a scale based on the age and the price. So we don't offer any free laptops. We do offer $50, $100, and $150 laptops. This is the sort of information this here is what's on the computers. It's worth noting how we do our work. We do have our own paid staff that are doing a lot of the work of the refurbishing work, but we also rely a lot on volunteers and interns as well as various work groups. We house one of our facilities in a warehouse where we employ 6 people with special needs, mostly people on the autism spectrum here in St. Paul that are able to help get some meaningful employment as well and meaningful work to help us sort through the equipment and get things ready for refurbishment to going out to the people that really need them. Computer repair is an important piece of what we do. It's not a very glamorous piece of what we do, but for the people who really are struggling to pay for equipment, getting it repaired is even more difficult. So even some families are able to maybe originally purchase the computer from Best Buy or something to that effect, or some other more established retail channels. But they can't necessarily do, once it breaks or they get a virus or something like that happens, most places would require anywhere between $25 or $50 to $100 to even look at the computer, whereas our repairs for anybody that can come in the door and some that can ship it to us, we'll repair the costs. We'll repair for $25 essentially. We do have to make a few exceptions if they're laptops, for example, and they have a broken screen. If we don't have that particular make and model in stock, we would have to purchase that, but we basically just charge them an app, a cost of what the you have to pay for it to get the part. And just to give an idea, we've provided about 2,500 computers last year. It's also worth noting we gave out about 10,000, distributed about 10,000 computers. I think I failed to mention that on the last slide. The last kind of third part of the stool, so to speak, that we try to address is why we're here and why we're all talking is the internet piece. So we have kind of a unique relationship with two other organizations. One's called Mobile Beacon and one's called Mobile Citizen. We're able to offer an unlimited 4G LTE device where people can use that as their at-home service as well as a mobile service that they can take out with them if they want to. If they're traveling, it is a nationwide service that uses the Sprint network. So anywhere that Sprint has good coverage, we're able to provide that service. And it really is a truly unlimited service. That's really the key piece of this. People are using it at home. Average use tends to be about 50 gigabytes per month, and that's pretty consistent with people's at-home use if they were to use a cable or a DSL connection as well. And for those of you that know, there basically are not any 50 gigabyte unlimited mobile services. So what we offer is truly unique, and it fits the needs of many of our people. It doesn't get throttled down either once they go over a certain amount. So it's key. That's the key part. The other key part, obviously, is the price. So what we're able to do is offer a service that ranges in price from $10 to $13 a month. It's all a prepaid service. So someone has to buy the device originally for $80, but once the device is purchased, they can just add time whenever they want. If maybe if money is tight in the home and they need to stop paying for a month, that's fine. It's prepaid. They just, once it turns off, it'll just stay off until they add more time. There's no additional hookup fees or anything if they let things expire. So again, it's a good flexible option for people that use our program. And we currently have about 15,000 active subscribers across the U.S. Majority of those are in Minnesota, but we have opened our services up the U.S. and we are in all 50 states. So one of the things that I kind of covered this already, but for those of you that just want to see it, the 200% of the federal poverty level is who we distribute computers to, or if they have some sort of documented disability, we're able to help serve them as well. In instances where we're going out, maybe outside of our office to work in a rural community or something like that, we can, if necessary, adopt, if we kind of can classify someone or a group of people to say that they're limited, they live in an area with limited access to technology. We can kind of include that. So a lot of times if a school, for example, has a free or reduced lunch rate greater than 75%, we just kind of adopt the entire school and we don't make everybody provide proof. We just say everybody that goes to the school is in an area with limited access to technology. So that's how we do some of the things that we do. I'll leave it to Anna, but citations are here on this slide, and if anybody has any interest in getting in touch with me, these are many of the different ways that you can do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank
Sam.
you. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I am ready. Yeah. My name is Anna. I'm the Executive Director of the Cable Association. I've been the Executive Director since December, so I don't know if I put myself in that highly qualified category that Bill was talking about. But we are an association of all the major cable companies who provide broadband, internet, and voice and video services. So Ann and Sam have done a really good job of describing why this is all so important. And so now maybe I can talk a little bit about what cable companies are doing to sort of practically get at this issue. So this is also an issue that I know many of the companies that I represent just personally feel very passionate about, and to make sort of meaningful strides to bridge some of these gaps. So with that, I will go ahead and get started here. These are just some of the member companies that I'm going to talk about today. Obviously, programs in this area sort of vary wildly. They have different eligibility requirements, obviously different service territories depending on the company. So I'm going to go through a few examples of what each provide, and that should maybe give you guys a feel for some of the options that are available. And then at the end, I'm going to talk a little bit about a national program that many of our member companies also support and partner with. So certainly these slides don't touch on every feature that these programs provide, but I tried to grab a few from each to sort of give you a flavor. And all of them have a great deal of information online too. So if you know sort of the name of the program, it's very easy to Google and find out more information. And if you have questions, I can certainly try to track down more information for you too. So the first one I'll talk about, Comcast Internet Essentials. That's, obviously the nation's largest high-speed internet adoption program. That one is $9.95 a month, so a reduced price. They also offer computers for less than $150 for qualified households too, so that could be a laptop or a desktop. They also do free training in the area of digital learning and digital literacy. The nice thing about this program too is Wi-Fi is included. Like Ann said, my kids do homework online now, and they actually can do it on their phones now too, so it's a nice feature that Wi-Fi is included in the program. And then recently Comcast expanded this program to not just families with kids on the school lunch program, as you can see on the slide, but also those in HUD housing. So that means it can include seniors, veterans, adults without children, so that expands the program quite a bit. So the speeds for this one are at 10 megabits, so enough for multiple devices. They're working on sort of a streamlined approval process, so in some circumstances they can do instant approvals for the program. The materials online, this is a good one to go online and get information about. It reflects, the diverse communities that they serve. I think they have about a dozen different languages for their materials, which is really good. And they also have a couple of pilot programs that I just learned about, sort of researching this, that I am curious to know if will come to Minnesota at some point. They're not in Minnesota right now. So I'm going to watch those in case that's something that might be expanded in the future. One is a pilot program for seniors, and the other one is for community college students who receive Pell Grants. So I'll watch for updates on those, and maybe we can chat about those in the future too. The next one I'm going to highlight is Charter. Charter calls their program Spectrum Internet Assist. I think their program started in 2016, and as of this year, it's now available everywhere in their service territory. This includes an internet modem. There's no contract. There's no data caps. It's high-speed internet. Obviously, they do charge a little bit more for Wi-Fi, but they do include a router. There's no activation fees. There's no rate increases during the life of the program. They don't do credit checks. Most of the programs don't. They just require that they don't have debt, obviously, with their companies. And most of the programs, I should say all of the programs, are limited to the service territory or footprints they serve, obviously. I think Ann had mentioned, too, that in that 65-plus category, I think 41% is what she said of adults aren't using the internet. So the nice thing about the Charter program, they do include folks who are on SSI, who are over 65, so that's a different feature for this program too. They also have quite a bit of information online if you look up the program, and their speeds are 30 megabits, so which is a pretty good speed. Mediacom, similar to the other programs, they participate with the national program that I'm going to talk about here in a minute. They have, their program is called Connect to Compete. It's what they offer in terms of how their company works to close the digital divide. They have, it's $9.95 a month. They include that free Wi-Fi. Right now their program is for those who qualify for that free or reduced cost lunch to make their services available to eligible families in areas where their broadband network is present. So there's no deposits, no contracts, no installation fees or equipment rental, anything like that. Their Wi-Fi modems are free, and they're affiliated with this Everyone On program that helps families purchase a low-cost laptop or desktop. Midco obviously serves quite a bit of Minnesota too. They sort of combine their program with their telephone assistance program, so Midco Lifeline Assistance Program. So I'm still figuring out a little bit about how that works. So, you know, it's not a promotion or a special offer. None of these programs are, but their income guidelines are quite a bit broader. So I would encourage you to go on their website. You can actually look at what an application looks like. So because that's affiliated with the federal and telephone assistance program, I think in Minnesota it's TAP. I'm not sure. I think it's just the Lifeline program at the federal level. They do have quite a bit of sort of broader qualifications, income verifications, those sorts of things. So I'd really go on the website and look at the application. You know, it's similar free reduced cost lunches, but they have quite a bit other things that are on the application that might make some folks qualified. Theirs is $9.95 a month. It includes that free wireless in-home modem, and their installation is free too. So everyone on, so this is a new thing for me, so I did quite a bit of research on this, and I think actually Sam's organization, maybe Sam knows a little bit more than I do about this. I believe they're part of this program too. So some of Minnesota's cable companies are affiliated with Everyone On, and that's kind of an aggregator, I would say, of resources. So if you go on that website, you can type in your zip code, and that can be helpful in finding some of these programs and which ones you might qualify for. Especially when it comes to devices, because I know that was something folks were really interested in. So not just the reduced price broadband, but also in connecting in terms of the technology that folks might be interested in getting. So it's a partnership with the local internet service providers for that free or reduced price internet services, but they also do other things like work with the device refurbishers to provide those discounted devices. And then they also collaborate to do free computer and internet courses, which is pretty cool. So I would also use that as a resource. And I know a number of our companies are supporters of that resource too. So like I said, everyone's program, Schoberg's Media, for example, they're part of that National Connect to Compete and Everyone On. But it should give you guys an idea of sort of what's out there. I'm really interested if you all see gaps where we're not filling, I'm happy to take those back to my companies, or if I can provide any resources, I'd love to put folks in touch with the right people. So I know too, my member companies are always looking for opportunities to get the word out about these programs as well, and do a lot of partnerships in that area. So if you have ideas around that, I'm all ears. I will also communicate those back to Minnesota cable companies too. So thank you for having me, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Great. Thank you, Anna. That was really interesting, and it's exciting to see the growth of those industry programs. I've been online on the Comcast Internet Essentials site, and can you clarify for us, are those materials open to anyone to use, whether they're Comcast
Yes.
or not?
Yep, absolutely. In fact, you can sort of log in as a user and download any of the brochures in any of those languages. Those materials are all free for your use. And if you need printed ones, I'm happy to get those. They'd be thrilled to share those with you.
Okay. And one of the things that as we work in our community initiatives, it's kind of right now is, back to school time. People are thinking about that. And how does a community kind of gather, or I suppose they just, I guess my question is, how can they get materials that would promote these programs to share at some of the school open houses?
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Obviously we could easily contact the companies and put them in touch if they don't. I know the individual companies have a lot of local partnerships, just with local school districts, local service centers that can sort of distribute. They're always looking for opportunities, though, to get that information out there. We also partner with like the Boys and Girls Clubs in some areas, because obviously, that's sort of a prime opportunity to get, families with kids. So again, open to ideas on how we can do a better job of that. But I know that a lot of them do have partnerships with those school districts and with those resource centers.
Okay. Well, maybe I could ask you if you could get like a single page PDF from your companies, and we could post
absolutely.
that in a blog post, and community people could just download those and print them off and promote the heck out of your company. So that's
Thank you. I love it.
great. Sam, I've got a question for you. If a community wants to partner with PCs for People to try and bring devices to their community, what's the process for doing that?
So there's a few different ways that we can work together. The most simple way, is basically to have us bring computers to you, essentially, or to ship them there. And what we would typically do is we would try to figure out, based on the location of the community, about how much we just try to make the cost simple. So what we would typically do is just come up with kind of a per computer cost, and it usually ranges somewhere between maybe $75 and $100, or it's probably between like $85 and $100 in Minnesota. And essentially what we can do is we just need to find the funding to help pay for that. So whether that would be through grant foundations, grant funding, or through we've worked with some internet service providers. We've worked with, for example, Midcon Communication, one of Anna's organizations she represents, where they're interested in kind of advertising those sound services, but they still wanted to get some good way to get people in. So they basically paid for people to get a computer. So people came to an event where we gave the computers out. We provided kind of a crash course in digital literacy, how to use the computer, what to do if it breaks, how to keep it running smoothly, that sort of stuff. And then it was then kind of turned into a nice commercial for Midcon Communication, so they were able to talk about their discounted internet service program. Some of the other ways that we can do things as well is depending if the community depending how much the community wants to be involved, we can try to also source equipment directly from the community itself. So if there are a number of businesses, or maybe one single large business that is getting rid of a large number of computers, they would meet the basic computer specifications that we need. We could basically come out and refurbish those computers right in the community themselves, and then leave them there for the community use. So it's really a nice way of doing things, where it kind of helps the community help itself. Does that kind of answer your question, Bill, or does it create any additional questions?
No, I think that's a good answer, and I appreciate that. And a question for you.
And I should say too, Bill, too, the internet would obviously be one piece in there too. If they are in an area where there's a strong Sprint signal, that's another service we could provide that too. We could try to pair computers with internet devices as well to provide that discounted kind of all-encompassing solution.
Okay. Have you identified in Minnesota where Sprint is strong in the rural areas?
Really kind of along major highways. That's kind of where they tend to fall. So if you're in a community that's got, even if you're, somewhere close to if you're on route to a destination, a lake destination, you're probably still in. I should say the main community itself. Usually, once you get a half mile or mile outside of the city limits, you're starting to, it doesn't quite have the same coverage as like Verizon would, for example. But within the city limits themselves, along those major highways, they tend to have pretty good service. And they do have a relatively accurate coverage map as well. If you go to Sprint's website and just look at where they have their high-speed LTE service, you can get a good idea.
Okay, thank you. And I know this webinar is about devices and connectivity, but when there's good stories, of course, about people bringing their computer home and plugging it in and waiting for it to do something, or the old hard disk drives where people thought they were cup holders. What kind of training do you think is a minimum to start with when people are just experiencing a new computer and an internet connection?
Well, I know the PCs for people spends time with the new computer users, and I think it's hard to beat that one-on-one connection with people. I think going to the libraries is a good place. Finding any community technology center, or really any community service community center where you're going to run into people. I know that Minnesota's quite well known for their North Star digital standards. The North Star digital standards is a collection of curriculum, but also standards for curriculum that helps people. They have tools available if you're working with somebody and want to use a tool to help them. There are, once you've gotten in a little bit, there are a number of tools. There's Lydia is another tool if you want to learn how to use Excel, or even some of the more further down the road, some of that sort of digital inclusion training. But I think at the onset, the best you can do is to find someone to try to help you using your own computer. I know when I was working again on the Fond du Lac Reservation, it was kind of a nice pairing with PCs for People and the Tribal Community Center. People came in for their training and then they got their computer. So we were able to do training on computers that were more or less had the same software that they were going to have once they get home. So I think that's kind of the best suggestion that I have, is try to find somebody who will actually help you. The libraries, certainly libraries in the cities, they used to volunteer. It's kind of an each one teach one, where people are invited to come in and just to sit at a computer and help people. So a volunteer like me would come in and help them learn what they need to be able to do.
Okay. Anna,
if I could just add. Oh, I was going to say, if I could just add one thing. PC for People is starting to kind of get involved in the training piece of things. We've always really tried to deal just specifically with providing hardware, but we do have a dedicated person on staff now that helps some of that training. And what we've learned, and kind of anecdotally from other organizations, is if you're interested in trying to do some basic digital literacy, to have a class that's how to use a mouse or how to use it, to type, those, you just don't see the people attending those. But if you can have some sort of outcomes-based class, or if maybe you're teaching people how to make a post on Facebook, you can incorporate all the different things you would need to. You can incorporate the typing, the mouse clicks, all those things, and people see the benefit to those things much more quickly and are a lot more interested in attending those sorts of those classes.
Oh, great. That's great. Anna, a question for you about the telecom providers. And I know that many of the telephone companies have similar programs. Do they see this as a market development tool or as a community service, or both?
That's a good question. Obviously I just represent cable companies. I don't represent the telecom companies, but I agree they do have similar programs. I think, like I said, I've spoken to a number of them that just passionately believe that this sort of technology and internet should be within access for people. So I think there's just a personal belief system that should be something that their companies make available to people, especially when some of these, service offerings can be expensive. So I think there's a couple of things there. I also think that there is a good story to be told, on behalf of the industry, and making their services available to everyone. So I think there's a number of different reasons there, all of which are positive.
Great. And I know we've done a lot of work with Schoberg Cable through the Blandin Foundation over the years, and some of that
There's
point.
There's a perfect example. Yeah.
Very dedicated to that digital inclusion idea. And then he realized that, if we give a discount for a short period of 6 months, then people realize the value. And then they get this are much more willing to subscribe on 100% of their own dime because they see the great value. So I do
Yeah,
believe
they
it
could
is
become licensed. Yeah.
a great positive market driver for that last bit of people who aren't connected now. So that's a lot of great mutual interest there between the providers
Absolutely.
and the community. Does anyone else have any questions from the audience? They've been pretty quiet out there so far, or any of the speakers have additional points they'd like to make? Waiting here for my chat box to light up and so on. But that's not happening yet. And so with that, I guess I'll just thank our speakers so much. I think it was really interesting and a lot of great resource, you know, so as we try and connect the companies to the communities. I think Anna has volunteered to be a good resource for that. And I don't know if we had your contact information on the page. Do you want to just give your email address? Are you willing to do that? Or phone
Absolutely.
number?
It's also on the last page of my presentation. So it's just aboroff@mncca.com. So you can email me. And my cell phone number is on that last page of the PowerPoint too.
Oh, perfect. And as Mary said, those will be posted online and with a link from the Blandin on Broadband blog. I'd encourage all of our participants to make sure they're on that as well for some great information. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Mary Magnuson. Thank you, speakers. Mary? Well, I'm going to go back here to this slide. Maybe not. Well, our next, Mary must have got, oh, there we go. September 14th, assessments, training, and certifications, a path forward for the digitally excluded. And there we'll be looking at things like the North Star Digital Assessment that Ann talked about, some different training curriculums that are out there from, we learned of one today, Comcast, and there's others that we'll highlight. And then certifications, recognizing that certifications are really a key for people to get information, short-term education with certifications that leads to better jobs. So thank you everyone for your participation today. And with that, we'll say thank you and goodbye.